Well, these dies are just for shanking the blank, that is for forming the shape and the profile, and for producing a nice flanish on the blank. Instead of it being a square cut blank like this one is, although it's not quite the same shape, this has sharp corners on it and it's almost flat. When the blank for the job is laid in, it produces the correct profile and the correct shape and polish and whatever pattern is necessary to put on it. And then they're put into a bowling die like this, which is not quite finished. This is soft, it wants hardening, but it's put into the bowling die, into that lip. This is the top punch when it's finished. That will come down in the press and form the shape of the bowl. Well, this die is broken, as you can see, and I've got to reproduce a new one. Therefore, stamping these solid bolster silver fish forks. And I've already cut a new bottom die, which is that one, and I've got to cut a new one, a new impression on this block. This block has been slightly pressed onto the new bottom die and left showing a slight outline of the blank. And now I'm going to put it in and start cutting it by with my chisel. That makes sure it doesn't fall on my foot, you know. Now this steel is high carbon, high chrome, and it's very, very tough to cut. It's whereas I'd probably sharpen my chisel once every 5 minutes on the dies that I've just been showing you. On this one, I shall be sharpening them up every minute because it's very, very tough stuff. So anyhow, here goes. I'm going to start at the bolster. Just at present I'm working to make room for my chisels to work, you see, to get down into the hole, sort of. That's that gone for a burden. I sharpen them on this grindstone. The angle at which the ground is critical, or the cutting edge isn't right to cut the die. When they're forged, before they ground up in this manner, they are reheated to nearly white heat and quenched in whale oil. This is the tang, the tang of the fork that I'm cutting now, where the handle fits onto the bolster, fits flush onto the bolster, and that's the part that I'm cutting now. The bolster is almost down to depth now. It's not finished by any means, but at least I've got the bulk of the material out, and I'm starting to rough the rest of the die out now, and the shank into the bosom. There are approximately half a dozen men like myself who are self-employed still around the city who do exactly the same as I do in the silver and spoon and fork trade. And on the various firms who employ die sinkers, there must be another dozen which are capable of doing this type of work. I'm smoothing the bolster up now with a needle file, because if it's not smoothed up properly, if there's any small scratches when it's all finished, or if it's undercut, the blank won't come out of the die. So I'm down to depth now, and I have to be careful that I don't take too much out, because you can't put back what you've taken out too much, you know. Now I'm using a riffle file now to get in confined spaces. You can't smooth the faces up unless you use one of these files. It's a file which is just cut at the end and bent to get in confined spaces. Sometimes they have to be made by hand and sometimes they're made by machine, but these are the only tools which you can use to file in confined spaces. And you can see it's taking shape now. This shank is diamond section, and you can see that it is half the diamond now. It's starting to take shape. Now I'm just going to knock a piece of lead in this bolster, which is virtually finished apart from polishing up. Yes, that's okay. Apart from polishing, that bolster's finished now. I'm filing up the surface which I've chipped with a chisel and making it smooth with a file as a next operation. And you'll notice that there aren't any prongs as such in the die. This is because it is a fish fork, and fish fork prongs are flat. So therefore, when the blank comes out of the die, like that, it will form the profile shape of it and planish it, but leave the prongs flat. And you'll also notice that there's an end here which joins the prongs up, which we call the gate end. That's waste. And this old-fashioned way of doing it, this gate end holds the prongs together when they're stamped so that they don't splay open, and afterwards, when the blank is stamped, it's cropped off to leave the end of the prongs, which the modern way of doing it now is to, in one operation, blank out the shape of the fork, the bosom and the prongs in one operation, and without a gate end on. We can start stoning it now to fine the surface down towards the polish. care has to be taken when you're scraping, polishing, to make sure that the contours all merge in carefully together, so that you don't, on the finished blank, like on this particular blank that's been stamped, the contours blend into one another, or if care isn't taken, there are what we call waves in it, which spoil the look of the article. Now, when the surface has reached a certain stage, by stoning it with carborundum stone, I can help myself by polishing it with a hand grinder. And the parts of the die which can't be polished by that machine, it has to be polished in the old-fashioned traditional manner. There's no other way of doing it. You can't get a polisher inside this bolster or down here in the shank. So we use a piece of wood, soft wood, and wet it, and then dip it in alloxite abrasive powder, and transfer it into the bolster with a drop more water in it to make it cling together. And by a movement across the bolster like that, eventually, by this method, the whole of the bolster will become polished. Over here we have an accumulation of blanks and trials from different firms over a period of about 10 years. Some aren't what you might call good quality. It's not what you might call good quality cutlery, but unfortunately this is what majority of the stuff like this is made in Sheffield at this period of time. The designs are still elaborate, and from a die sinking point of view are quite tedious to cut. These leaves have to be cut with hammer and chisel. There's no easy way of doing it. This is a cranberry server, and it has produced these cranberries and leaves and onto this spoon. It's got to have a bottom die to mate up with, of course, but I haven't got the bottom die available. But the top die has to be cut like that, and then the bottom die, and then it has to be fitted onto a bottom die which fits in all the detail in the punch. If you wanted to remove a small amount, like a bead in a die, the general idea is such that you'd actually mark the spot where you want the bead to come out, sort of centre punch it, and then you'd use an old-fashioned pump drill like this, which resembles one of these things that the old ancient Britons used to use to get a fire going, sort of. And to start it off, there's a cutter in the bottom, which we have to make ourselves. To start it off, you twist it up the length of the shank and then press it down, and you remove just the right amount of material, which you have to check from time to time with a depth gauge. And when you've removed that small amount of material, which can't be done any other method than this really, you take the drill out and find a bead punch which is the correct size that you've previously chosen, and just fill that indentation out to a perfect bead like that. And you've done that without moving the material, without pushing the material. You've just done it by cutting it out. Now that's in a fairly well finished state now, almost ready for a trial. Most of it is polished up, and we can't tell anymore whether it's good or bad until it's tried. there aren't so many die sinkers. It's just that there's no, to my knowledge, there's very few apprentices growing up to take the place of the men who are now doing it. When they retire, there'll be very few to carry on, in my opinion.